Buenos dias from Haymarket. This is the Rorschach Spain update from the 20th of August 2026. Quick summary of what's going down in Spain. Very, very sorry to miss last week. We're back. Kicking off this week's special longer episode, a little update on the central government. Still looking into what went around. 70,000 irregular migrants from Morocco entered Ceuta, the Spanish enclave in Africa. In case you missed it, these mass entries were organized via social media and communication channels like Telegram and WhatsApp when the border was unofficially declared open. Opposition parties, including Partido Popular, demanded answers from the central government about how this happened. On Wednesday the 19th, members of PP, led by Alberto Núñez Feijóo, went to the Supreme Court after the central government said it wouldn't allow several ministers to appear before the Senate about Ceuta, saying it was dealing with it internally. Meanwhile, there are vulnerable, displaced migrants, including young children on Ceuta beaches, waiting until a decision can be made what to do after a very recent ruling from the Supreme Court that prevents authorities from immediately returning migrants who are intercepted at sea while trying to enter Ceuta or Melilla. Some people have already returned to Morocco. On Wednesday the 19th, the central government said that around 500 vulnerable, unaccompanied children will be relocated to the mainland, but that still leaves the hundreds of other displaced people, some of whom Feijóo should be repatriated immediately. That said, note the number of the tens of thousands who originally came. Over 90%, well over 90% have already returned to Morocco. And that's not the only thing that's been affected by the situation in Ceuta. On Friday, the 7th of August, a spokesperson for FC Barcelona said the team decided to cancel its preseason friendly in northwestern Morocco that was supposed to happen on Saturday the 15th because they said it would be inappropriate considering everything going on right now. On Tuesday the 18th, 3 earthquakes above magnitude 4 struck southern Spain's Granada province, causing minor building damage and at least 3 light injuries, including a child who's taken to the hospital. The strongest, a magnitude 4.7 quake, hit near Gojar, about 10 kilometers south of Granada at 10:30 a.m. local time. Its shallow epicenter made it more strongly felt and increased the risk of localized damage. Tremors followed a magnitude 5 earthquake last Saturday that damaged homes and cars, temporarily closed Granada's famous Alhambra Palace Fortress. Although no serious structural damage was previously found, the Alhambra authorities restricted tourist access after Tuesday's quakes and remain on high alert. Meanwhile, great news for EU consumers this week. On Wednesday the 12th, the EU introduced new restrictions on toxic substances often known as forever chemicals that are often found on food packaging along with cutting waste generally. These chemicals take an extremely long time to break down and are increasingly associated with adverse health effects worldwide. The EU has decided enough is enough. According to the European Commission statement, food packaging containing high levels of the chemicals will not be able to be sold in the EU market. Traces will be allowed, but this will be strictly monitored. By 2030, all packaging across the EU must be recyclable, and single-use items like sauce packets and mini shampoo bottles will be phased out. Speaking of plastic use, as part of the new regulations, the country is preparing to introduce its new deposit return and refund system, known by its Spanish language acronym as SDDR. Under the planned system, eligible drink containers will carry a 10-cent refundable deposit. Customers pay the deposit when buying a drink, get it back when they return the empty container. This is already a pretty popular model, but now it's legally binding. For the entrepreneurial minded, this could mean discarded bottles and cans become worth collecting, similar to the metal collectors that already frequent Spanish streets. Discarded bottle may no longer be worthless waste, but 10 cents waiting to be collected. Last story on this, here are a few things that will be gradually phased out over this year as part of the new regulations. Plastic bags, shrink-wrapped fruit and vegetables, miniature hotel toiletries, styrofoam takeaway containers, some single-use food packaging are all being targeted. New color-coded labels will also make it easier for shoppers to separate packaging for recycling. Changes will be introduced gradually, so many consumers may not notice a major difference immediately. Hotels and restaurants will face further restrictions in the coming years, including requirements for reusable takeaway containers and the eventual removal of many single-use items. Coffee capsules are also in the spotlight, with producers required to make their packaging more sustainable. Next up, what's the key to making a person live longer and healthier? Well, professors from the University of Vigo, northwest of the country in Galicia, are trying to find out in a new study. According to initial reports, the region is emerging as a Spanish blue zone of extraordinary longevity, rivaling places such as Sardinia in Italy and Martinique in France, with the country's highest rates of centenarians, nearly double the national average. and women vastly outnumber men at around 3 to 1. Researchers have specifically identified 2 hotspots spanning 34 municipalities and a newer central zone stretching from south of Santiago towards Lugo and Os Ancares. By studying centenarians' genetics, lifestyles, and environments, initial findings obviously point to a simple recipe for longevity, daily activity, stable social life, and low stress. But perhaps more surprisingly, they're also looking into whether living at moderate altitude may also trigger protective cellular mechanisms. One researcher described it, these centenarians carry a health heritage worth preserving that is exactly what they're trying to do. Turning to history, what if some of Barcelona's most familiar buildings, businesses, and wealthy family names were connected to the transatlantic slave trade? Historian Martin Rodrigo Aljarilla is trying to answer that question in a fascinating interview with news outlet El País released on Sunday the 9th. He takes readers through Barcelona and points out buildings, monuments, and streets connected to people who made fortunes through slavery and the colonial trade. His research suggests the best-known slaveholding families in Catalonia are only the tip of the iceberg. Wealth generated through the enslavement of Africans helped finance properties, businesses, banks, and other institutions whose influence can still be seen today. What makes this story especially compelling is that Rodrigo isn't simply interested in naming individuals. He argues that slavery was part of a much larger economic system. His project, España Esclavista, has mapped more than 200 physical locations connected to this history, bringing a largely overlooked part of Spain's past into public view. Thought-provoking read for anyone interested in history of Barcelona and the stories hidden behind familiar places. A link to España Esclavista is in the show notes. From history to tourism, in a recent El País article released on Wednesday the 19th, the news outlet wrote about how overtourism is putting growing pressure on rivers in Andalusia as overcrowding is damaging fragile ecosystems. According to environmentalists and scientists, the Chia River near Nerja in southern Spain is a key example. Once attracted up to 3,000 visitors a day, prompting authorities to close it in August 2023. However, despite this measure, the Andalus government is considering reopening it under restrictions, potentially allowing up to 500 visitors a day. Environmental experts aren't happy, arguing this is still far too many for the river's biodiversity. And it's not just here. Other rivers, including the Verde, Durcal, Cebollón, Bocaleones, and Turron, are also heavily visited, leading to problems including trampling riverbeds and vegetation, litter, pollution from sunscreen and urine, disturbances from dogs and noise, and damage to wildlife habitats. Next, festival aiming to prove that large events can be greener, Rototom Sunsplash, taking place from the 17th to the 22nd of August in Benicassim, is promoting itself as a model for large-scale sustainable events. The 6-day reggae event welcomes around 25,000 visitors a day and combines music with debates on climate change, housing, human rights, and social justice. Its green initiatives include LED lighting, solar power, water recycling, locally sourced food, and plastic-free policy. Since 2021, the partnership with drinking water company Tuawa has helped eliminate more than 3.2 million plastic bottles. This year, over 50 water refill stations have been installed across the site. The festival is also using hybrid energy technology, expected to save around 3,000 liters of fuel, cut more than 8 tons of CO2 emissions during the event. Continuing with festivals, a lot less sustainable, more than 3,000 people and around 1,000 vehicles descended on a rural site with a population of only 300 near La Granja in Cáceres for an illegal multi-day rave. The gathering began on Thursday the 13th, triggering a major Guardia Civil operation. Officers initially attempted to prevent access, but were overwhelmed by the volume of cars, vans, motorhomes, and lorries arriving at the rural site. By Friday afternoon, hundreds of vehicles had filled fields near the town's natural swimming pool, while surrounding roads experienced severe congestion. Authorities expect the rave to continue through the weekend, underscoring the growing challenge of unlicensed events to organize via encrypted apps like Telegram and WhatsApp. So, is the country really as cheap as it once was? For years, Spain is so cheap has been part of the country's appeal. Cheap property, cheap food, cheap coffee, and cheap living. According to this week's opinion piece by Esme Fox for news outlet The Local, perhaps it's time to retire the phrase. According to Fox, the latest figures often tell a different story. Spain's cost of living has risen 78% in the past decade, while housing prices have surged and food costs are up 41.5% since 2018. Average salaries, meanwhile, remain far below those many wealthier those of many wealthier European countries, leave alone North America. And this is where the idea becomes a little complicated. While the country may still look affordable to visitors earning a foreign salary or spending a few weeks on holiday, Fox proposes that for someone earning Spanish wages and paying Spanish rent, the equation is different, because behind the €2 and €3 coffee and €295,000 average cost of a dwelling is a country where locals are increasingly being priced out of the lifestyle that once made the country feel so affordable in the first place. And some may be a bit annoyed by all the residents making Northern European and North American salaries. Link in the show notes. Now, look at recent policy changes. On Wednesday, the 19th, the Supreme Court officially ruled that changing legal sex does not erase or overturn criminal responsibility for offenses committed beforehand. This clarification made by the court was sparked by an event last April when a man from Castellón, eastern Spain, assaulted his former partner and their 8-year-old daughter during a confrontation over visitation. He was sentenced to 9 months in prison for gender-based violence against his former partner and another 9 months for domestic violence against his daughter. The defendant later changed his legal sex from male to female, which was approved on the 1st of June 2025, and appealed his conviction, arguing that he could no longer be convicted under gender violence legislation. The Supreme Court rejected his appeal, stressing that legal sex changes have no retroactive effect and that criminal responsibility is determined by the circumstances when the offense occurred, but there wasn't anything legally set in stone. That has now changed with recent legislation. If you're looking for something else that's interesting to listen to in addition to yours truly, we've got a little recommendation for you, The Roca Project, podcast hosted by Carlos Roca, national journalist. The interview podcast has just reached over 100 episodes and has become one of the country's most popular. The show features long-form conversations with people from very different backgrounds, often focusing on personal experiences, difficult moments, and stories that might otherwise go unheard. It's originally in Spanish, but the YouTube version has a great dubbing job in English. If you missed the eclipse on Wednesday the 12th, well, you'll only have to wait until this time next year to catch the next one. On the 2nd of August 2027, there'll be an opportunity to see another total solar eclipse, this time in southern Andalusia, Ceuta, Melilla, Gibraltar, and that's not all. According to meteorologists, this will be a marine eclipse rather than this year's terrestrial eclipse, meaning it will affect ocean tides and marine life. Plus, it's predicted that viewers will be able to see it for longer, as it'll be almost 3 times longer than the one this year. Probably already heard this one already. Lots of people are talking about it, but Catalan singer Aitana's song Superestrella has become the soundtrack of the summer, turning into a surprise global Latin pop hit. More than a year after its release on her album Cuatro Azul, the nostalgic pop anthem topped Billboard's Hot Latin Songs chart earlier this month, giving the Catalan singer her biggest international breakthrough yet. The song has been everywhere in Spain this summer, even featuring the country's World Cup victory celebrations. And once it gets stuck in your head, good luck trying to get it out. That's it for this week. Thank you for joining us. Anything you want to ask or tell us? info@rorschach.com. Hasta la próxima.